Hello everyone, quickly, I wasn't planning on doing this video. I have a longer video planned I'll do later if I can, that I've been trying to do since yesterday, but I saw another clip, and here is wisdom. I saw another clip of Mr. Peter Thiel, one of the oligarchs you have literally given your country to. I'm talking to the rubes. And these little clips, the guy manages to horrify me in several. This is the third one I've seen. 20-second clips. And he said basically, he said that the 2020s in America, and he would know, right? The billionaire oligarch, he would know. The 2020s in America are kind of like the 1920s in Germany. Liberalism is kind of exhausted. Democracy is kind of exhausted. And he opened his statement with, "I never look at history as cyclical." Oh, it's totally cyclical. The patterns utterly repeat. I'll get to that though. Hold on. This is important. So he opened his statement by saying, well, I never want to present history as cyclical, but... And then he went on to the rant about how the 2020s in America are like the 1920s in Germany, where liberalism's kind of exhausted and democracy's kind of exhausted. And, in the future, we're going to have to ask questions. How far outside the Overton window are we willing to go? I am a student of history. I was horrified by every bit of that statement. I know what I'm about to say is way over the rube's head and most people's head. But here we go. First of all, his opening statement about how history is not cyclical. I could not disagree with that more. Another thing I'm a student of is human behavior. History is totally cyclical. That's why we were able to warn people for 8 years. Hey, this is looking a lot like a white nationalist movement, very reminiscent of Adolf Hitler's type thing back in that time. It's looking exactly like it, guys. Be fucking aware. Get out of the cult, etc. Many of us said it. Many did not listen. Either because they didn't care because it was their team and they thought they'd get something out of it they wanted. Or they're just stupid and they don't know history. They don't see the patterns repeating. They've repeated throughout history over and over again. Every tyrant is just like the tyrant before them. And they do the same exact shit. The same exact tactics. Well, the tactic that was just used on you, America, and the 30% ran with it, thought it was cool. One is divide and conquer. Two is take the stronger enemy from the inside rather than open war. That's the tactics, or two tactics that were used on you. You fell for it. You handed your country over. It's too late. So history is totally cyclical. The patterns always repeat. And that's why people are able to point to the masses or say to the masses, this has happened before in history. Don't let it happen again, because it never ends well for anyone. Be ye rube, Nazi, non-rube, non-Nazi, no matter who you are, no matter how safe you think you are. This authoritarian thing, this dictatorship thing, never ends well for anyone. And I know people have been hearing me say that for years, and they're just like, we're gonna see, we're gonna see. So then Thiel continues to say, in his opinion, because he acts like it's just fact. And, what he's saying is just fact. I find this to be a common theme in the right-wing grift/terror machine and its minions. When they say something, we all must run on that, jump off that pedestal, or run with that paradigm, run with that framing as if it's fact, when it ain't a damn sight close to fact. So he continues to say, in the 2020s in America, it's a lot like the 1920s in Germany. Liberalism's exhausted. Democracy's exhausted. Okay, let's take that statement. According to who, Mr. Thale? The Nazis? Because all I heard, children, class, I don't know if you heard it, all I heard in all of his statements was the perspective of a Nazi sympathizer in 1920s Germany on politics. That's all I heard. Every word of it. That's all he's spouting. These people think they wise. They think they doing something new. They think they creative because they have all this money. They an oligarch. They think they enlightened because they read a bunch of occult bullshit and other things. And for some reason, they idealize these situations that they have no clue what it was like because they weren't even alive. The horrors. The bloody horrors. As they sit there in their oligarchy, spouting bullshit like history ain't cyclical. And hey, 2020s America's a lot like 1920s Germany. In what way, sir? Oh, well, liberalism was exhausted and democracy was exhausted. What a fool. That statement is nothing more than the Nazi perspective on politics in the early 1900s. That's all that is. I couldn't believe he was saying it. And it proves once again, money does not buy wisdom. Why isn't it wisdom what Mr. Thale is spouting? In his genius, in his all-knowing, all-wise oligarchness. Because does Mr. Thale know? I'm sure he does. What the Nazis would have done to him as he got on board with their ideology, like he's doing now? It wouldn't be good. Because if you were mentally challenged, you were executed. You were seen as a burden on society. If you were not white, pure Aryan, you may be executed. Because you weren't the kind of society they wanted. If you were gay, you were executed. The Nazis did not like gay people, mentally challenged people, infirm people, non-white people. You were nothing if you were not white Aryan. You were nothing. White straight male Aryan. You were nothing. I won't describe what they would have done to Mr. Thale back then. The party he's advocating for right now, the ideology he's advocating for right now. Because what's left, Mr. Thale? Did he get asked that question next? Boy, he wouldn't want me to interview him. We'd have a good time. Because I ain't a rube and I ain't for sale, son. And I know Nazi rhetoric the second I hear it. Funny coming from a gay man, though. Kind of ironic. Because they wouldn't have liked him very much had he been a German citizen at the time. Hey, and that Thale name, that E-I-I-E thing, they might have thought he was a Jew. Maybe he is a Jew, I don't know. No idea about Mr. Thale's ethnic background. Didn't look at it yet. Don't need to. When he's spouting open Nazi ideology, the Nazi perspective on politics, that's what you've just heard in Mr. Thale's statements. That's what I heard. My mouth dropped open. I'm like, whoa, really? Liberalism. You mean the liberal idea of accepting gay people and not executing them? Not treating them like second-class citizens, Mr. Thale? Because that's how you'd be treated under Nazi ideology. That's if they let you live. Do you know, rubes out there, Mr. Thale, do you know what the hardcore conservative base in this country would do to you, sir, if they had you? And they didn't have to face any consequences for their actions. In other words, what they'd like to do to you, the hardcore right-wing base, you know who I'm talking about. Do you know what they would do to you if they had the opportunity? You know those people you're emboldening right now, Mr. Thale. They don't like you very much either. They'll accept you for now because you helped their orange messiah get back on top. But they don't like you. To the point they might want to do some things to you if they had the opportunity. You know what I mean. You know what society used to be like. Where if someone was gay, you could just whoop their ass and leave them half dead on the ground and no one would give a fuck because they're gay. Who cares, right? No, they're human. And no one has the right to do that to them, whether they agree or disagree with their lifestyle. Look, Mr. Thale, I'm sticking up for you. Mr. Nazi, because the Nazis wouldn't have stuck up for you. Oh, no. And the hardcore right-wing base, oh, they wouldn't stick up for you if they had got their hands on you, sir. They ain't so forgiving as I. They're not as accepting as I. Not even close. But you know that, because neither are you. So let's take the liberalism is dead, exhausted, democracy is exhausted. Again, I ask, according to who? The Nazis of 1920s Germany? Yeah. So what's left, Mr. Thale? What direction should we go? All-knowing, all-wise oligarch? What direction is left if we don't want to go towards liberalism? Fascism! Of course, Mr. Thale would never say that, even though he is saying it. When he says, we really need to ask how far we're willing to go outside the Overton window. And that's an oligarch's way of trying to come off as wise and smart using the phrase Overton window, when all he really means, and I knew it the second I heard it, is outside the norms. How far outside the norms are we willing to go? Are we willing to go to dictatorship and fascism and small groups of oligarchs, feudalism, owning different sections of the world, and those different little empires of oligarchs, they all fight each other in wars. And guess who they get to fight the wars? Your dumbass children. You rubes. Or excuse me, the children of dumbasses. Let me phrase it that way. That's who fights the wars. As Thale and his group of oligarchs, make that happen. That's the world they want. That's what they're trying to usher in, and you gave it to them. You gave them your permission. And do you notice how vague he was being at the end there? Well, if we don't go towards liberalism and democracy, which way do we go? Well, that's when the vagaries began. Vagaries like, we really need to ask how far outside the Overton window or the norms we're willing to go. Because, me and Elon, we really want our oligarch utopia. And even though we're sent to billionaires, we just don't have enough yet. We need more of your resources and money. World. That's what they're saying to the world. Anyone that heard him say those 3 sentences or whatever he said in that statement, and you were not horrified by it, even you're ignorant of history and don't understand how it works and don't understand what he was saying was straight up Nazi ideology, even though he's a gay man who the Nazis would have executed. Horrifying that these people own our country now. Horrifying that they're not afraid to make statements like that anymore. Because I noticed 2020's America was a lot like late 1930s Germany, personally. That's my perspective on politics. But for a totally different reason than Mr. Thale thinks. Well, in late 1939 to be exact, 38, 39, that's when Hitler pulled his second moves, his false flag events, etc. His second coup attempt, and he got in power. And it defied logic then as it defies logic now. Hitler was out there saying vile things. The difference is, late 1930s Germany, the economy was really bad. They were still recovering from World War I. They were desperate. We're not quite in the same situation. But what we do have in common with late 1930s Germany is a lot of stupid people that don't understand the consequences of their actions. And we have a lot of oligarchs who are willing to kiss the ring and finance the beast of the moment. The beast of the moment then was Adolf Hitler. Oligarchs threw money at him too. Just like they're doing with Donnie Shitbags right now. So the connection I personally see between 2020's America and late 1930s Germany is you have a cult-like movement that started off as a white nationalist movement, and it eventually looks like it's going to lead to global war of some sort. Threats are being made left and right. Greenland, Canada, Britain, Panama. Just like Hitler did. Threatened all his neighbors all the time. Made treaties with people and then just threw them in the garbage. It's the only reason Russia fought with us in World War II. Because they got betrayed because they made a deal with Hitler. So again, a cult-like white nationalist movement, a huge component of it. Nationalism, a huge component of it. Yet, these same people that are part of a nationalist movement who have been warning about globalism, that's their word, have just made it happen. Donnie's all about no borders now. Thale's all about no borders. Musk is definitely about no borders. So no, liberalism is not exhausted. Democracy is not exhausted. Here's why they say these things. Because they want more. And dictatorship, in their minds, gets them more. But here's the thing about dictatorship. You could be on the chopping block, son. Any day the dictator wants you on the chopping block. So again, you got to be alive to spend that money. That's the problem with trusting and making deals with a dictator, a crazy person, a beast. Here's another fun thing about the little Thale speech. I know none of the rubes will get the nuance. Most humans won't get the nuance. We just pretend these things don't happen. But it proves every damn thing I've ever said about politics. Thale is presenting the idea of liberalism as and democracy as bad. The only alternative left is fascism. Yet, Adolf Hitler gets presented to us by the right and by guys like Thale when it's convenient for them as a socialist, a liberal. Adolf Hitler's been called a liberal since 1945 by the right side of politics and the rubes in this country because they don't know any better and the machine knows the rubes believe it. Yet when Thale's on camera giving a speech now that he's bought the presidency and owns America along with Musk, Putin, and Donnie, all of a sudden the ideology is being presented as non-liberal, non-democratic, non-socialist. The behavior is being described as fascist when he says, we need to ask how far outside the Overton window we're willing to go because the oligarchs want fascism. They don't want democracy anymore. Why are they going after Canada? Because it's democracy. Why are they going after Britain? Because it's democracy. Why did they go after our country that they now own? It's a democracy. Without democracy, Vlad and his thugs and the various oligarchs of the world can do whatever the fuck they want. There's no sanctions. There's no fly lists. There's none of that. There's no consequences without democracy. These people don't believe in anything. Maybe they have a tiny bit of Nazi ideology or something they read in a fucking novel written by a Nazi scientist, because that's just how empty and vapid they are. The most cliche of hatreds fills up their mind and consumes their thoughts and becomes their ideology. They're nothing special. They're just children. Oh, Nazis sound cool because I'm rich and I don't got to face the consequences. Oh, you do, son. Oh, but you do, son. That's what I'm here to tell you. So, although Hitler was presented in that whole ideology, forget Hitler specifically, that whole ideology is presented as socialist and communist and bad, when it really was just fascist. And Mr. Thale himself, now part of the right-wing grift/terror machine, a very big part. He's all the things you wish Soros was, and more. Now he's presenting it as a non-liberal, non-socialist, non-democratic type movement. There's only one thing left besides non-democratic: fascism. Class, rubes, children. So when it's convenient, they reveal the real plan. We don't need governments or democracy anymore because me and Elon want to take all the money on Earth. And maybe we'll leave a little for Donnie. And Donnie thinking, I want to take all the money on Earth. And maybe, if I'm in a good mood, I'll leave a little for Thale and Musk. That's if I don't handle them myself. Donnie's saying that. Because just like in late 1930s Germany, all the oligarchs and companies that lined up to pay tribute to Adolf, they're doing the same thing now. They all thought they were safe too. Were they? It's a shame, this pursuit of being the first trillionaire, having all the gold on Earth by various humans, has done a lot of damage. And it's just disgusting at this point that I have to sit here and hear worthless oligarchs spout literal Nazi talking points from the early 1900s. And make the exact opposite point I'm making to people. They're making the point that, yeah, this democracy thing is so passé. Let's go back to dictatorship. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Let me word it correctly. Let's see how far outside the Overton window the peasants are willing to accept. Because they gave us the country. They're that dumb. What else will they give us? How much more of what they have will they give us? Because they're stupid. And it's a football game to them. And they'll tout how great we are as we take every single thing they have. Thanks, Rubes. Yeah, so 2 points. I find it funny that Mr. Thale has Nazi ideology, or believes that, when the Nazis would have executed him back in that time and seen him as a second-class citizen and seen him as a cretin. I find it funny that in one breath, the right-wing grift/terror machine, oligarch machine, presents Hitler as a socialist liberal commie. And in another breath, they present him as non-liberal, non-democratic, and maybe we need to see how far we can go outside the Overton window. Maybe we can get to like Hitler level or something, and then people will accept it. Of course they would accept it. You know how I know that? Because they've accepted it many times in history before. History is cyclical, son, even though the all-wise, all-knowing oligarch, God, Mr. Thale, doesn't agree with that statement. The patterns repeat over and over again. Why? Because man never changes. They just, for the most part, stay stupid. What evidence do I have of that? Well, a gay man spouting Nazi ideology from the early 1900s. Because he's so greedy, he's willing to join the right-wing grift machine. Because he's already rich as fuck. Because he doesn't care about his fellow gay brethren. Because he's aight. And he believes, and Elon believes, and Donnie believes, whatever gets them more money. And that's it. And the Rubes believe the Buffalo Bills got to win. Otherwise, I can't feel good about myself. That attitude cost all of us our country. It's gone. Lest a miracle happen. And in 2024, we have a centibillionaire oligarch sitting in a chair thinking he's all wise, thinking he has any shred of wisdom, as he touts the virtues of non-liberalism, of non-democracy, which only leaves fascism. When that very fascism, that perspective he's putting forth, the perspective of a Nazi in the 1920s, would have seen him executed as a second-class citizen. And the rubes in this country, if they got a hold of you, yet he aligns himself with these same people that would like to see him dead. All because he's willing to say these things, all because he's willing to try and enact these things by the world, or by his way into that world. Only because it gets him more money and power. That's it. It's the only reason. That's how I know that this stupidity exists, because that's the height of stupidity. Again, I know all of you out there at the top think you're all wise and all knowing, but you're not. And you prove it with that stupidity I just described. You would tout the virtues of an ideology that would see you dead. That's how I know you're stupid. And people would shake their heads and say, yeah, I like that sound of that, as long as their football team wins the election. It's astounding to watch. It's horrifying to watch. And it just tells me, man really never changes, does he? This same ideology has been spouted before by greedy people, opportunists, who would turncoat on their own community of the types of people that are like them, as long as it got them some money. People die over this shit. Whole countries fall over just, oligarchs' greed. Nothing more. Because they can get a segment of society to, mobilize, believe in their bullshit, whatever doctrine they preaching. When in the end, they only want more money. And that's why Mr. Thale was saying what he's saying. He doesn't like democracy. Again, they're proving at the top they ain't down with democracy anymore, because being a centibillionaire or a multi-billionaire just ain't enough. They need more and more and more and more and more and more and more. Anyway, I just found the piece of footage fascinating, fascinatingly horrifying, and I can't believe we're at the point, again, in the 2020s. It's a long way since 1939 Germany. You'd think people would know better than to say this stuff out loud. You'd think more people would call it out. Most people don't even understand it. What I heard, what you just heard in Mr. Thale's statements, was the literal political perspective of a Nazi in the 1920s. Whether they were Nazis yet or not, that doesn't even matter. It's the ideology behind the name. I couldn't believe it. And a lot more people should be outraged by it and shocked by it and horrified. 2024, we are hearing blatant, outright, the political perspective of a Nazi. Liberalism is exhausted. Democracy is exhausted. According to who? The Nazis? Yeah, the Nazis, yes. The Nazis of today, The Nazis of 1939, same thing. You'll see. Have a good evening.